Disgraced civil rights attorney Sanford Rubenstein says that he is backing off the Eric Garner case. And I have a bridge for sale. This as Rubenstein faces rape allegations, authorities saying that he is accused of sexually assaulting a woman connected to Reverend Sharpton's National Action Network. Officials say the alleged incident took place at Rubenstein's penthouse last week after Sharpton's 60th birthday party. Tests are being conducted to determine whether the woman was drugged. She says she passed out during the attack and passed out again when she went home the next morning. Her attorneys say police have collected dozens of bags of evidence from Sanford's apartment and even listened in on a control call that the victim had made to Rubenstein after the alleged attack. In fact, there was a meet that was set up that was also going to be monitored by the police before the Daily News broke the story before that was scheduled. In the meantime, Reverend Sharpton has cut ties with Rubenstein and is attempting to distance himself altogether from him. Sharpton telling Capital New York that Rubenstein, I'm quoting directly, was useful to me and I was useful to him, but we were never in the same political bed. However, Capital says not the impression that Sharpton gave earlier when he was quoted in a foreword in Rubenstein's own book published back in '97. Sharpton said that he and Rubenstein became close during the Abner Louima case, and Sharpton, again writing in the foreword of the book, that began a friendship and an alliance and a bond that has stretched over the past decade. Sandy has been with me through many cases and investigations, and he sent even more flowering language. All right, let's bring in the tardy Richard St. Paul involved in this one as well here. You, by the way, haven't gotten a call to handle the case, have you?
No, not yet, but I'm looking forward to handling it.
I'm sure you.
Somebody's got to police the police.
All right. Dominic, you know the two principles and everything else. We knew this was going to go through the playbook. This is 101. You get away from him and everything else. It's also personal for Sharpton because the alleged aide has been with him at the National Action Network for a long time. And Rubenstein, they've had a long relationship regardless of what the Reverend had to say. But give a little context here, what's going on. I know they're trying to separate from each other, but there's also concern what's going to come out during the investigation. It's maybe not just relegated to what did or didn't happen in that apartment.
What's going on is a classic bait and switch. The talk that Rubenstein is walking away from the case. He's not. He's only publicly walking away from the case. What I found remarkable at the funeral of Eric Garner, we were there in Brooklyn, and of course, because of the media stuff, we had to be there earlier. All the lawyers were there at 11 a.m. in the morning for a service that wasn't until 7 p.m. 8 hours in advance because everybody knows the payday that's coming off of this. This is a case that's not going to be fought by the city of New York. That's why the family's been praising the mayor. It's going to be sign the check. The Democratic controller is going to sign off on it. The mayor just wants this to go away. And it's going to go away once the city cuts the check. But Rubenstein is still going to get his part. Remember, he already had the family sign a retainer where he gets a third. So he's all this talk about him walking away. He's not. I met his partner at the funeral for Mr. Garner. All that's happening is he's going to fall back and the partner is going to step up. As a matter of fact, they're going to announce this on Saturday when the partner is going to be there with Reverend Sharpton. But one thing Mr. Sharpton is correct about, Rubenstein, he's not as tight. He was always the lawyer, but that's it. Sharpton moves with the President of the United States and major players, not with Mr. Rubenstein.
It's going to be interesting how this plays out here. But again, for me, if in the investigation there is any opportunity that Rubenstein can flip any information here to maybe lessen, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, that'll be fascinating on some of the financials over the years for these cases. Okay, cell phone cameras, let's face it, they're here to stay. From the selfie generation or whatever you want to call it, not me personally, but everybody's got one. And they certainly are more and more prevalent when there are exchanges between police and the public, almost in every incident, but especially seemingly whenever there's a question of an excessive use of force. Now, just take a look at this incident, this coming out of Brooklyn, where a police officer is caught on video, and it certainly seems pretty clear, taking more than what turned out to be $1,000 out of the pocket of the man who he's arresting. The officer then pepper sprayed the man's sister when she asked the police officer to give her back the money. The attorney, by the way, representing the man right now, said he's got all the work stubs and everything else to prove it was legitimately earned, etc. Not that that would mitigate why the money would be taken away. And I understand the internal affairs are now investigating this case. Let's look now at another recent incident also out of Kings County, where surveillance camera caught police officers pistol whipping and then beating a teenager who was suspected of smoking marijuana. Commissioner Bratton, he has responded to the recent incident, saying that 99% of the officers are good, but the other 1% that are brutal, corrupt, and racist are quote-unquote poisoning the well. These instances of what seem to at least be on the surface police brutality or excessive use of force, they're not happening in a vacuum. I mean, just look at the Eric Garner case, cell phone camera catching that situation, and the chokehold in Staten Island. Take the situation in New York, where an NYPD officer throwing a pregnant woman to the ground on her stomach. These just in the last few months, people. And we know this isn't relegated just New York City. Indiana, we saw the police just yesterday, the video becoming public of breaking down that car window, then tasering a guy because he wouldn't produce information. This all started over a seatbelt violation. And another seatbelt violation in South Carolina. Got a guy, after he was asked to go get his license, he reached into the car and getting it, and then after multiple shots, the guy was then shot. Thankfully, he survived, and he constantly asked one question: why? Why did you shoot me? So with all this, I got an interesting question that was asked to me, and I'll start with you, Richard, and work our way around. It could be one of two things. That now, because all the cameras are around for these exchanges, that this small sliver of exchanges where there's an abuse of force are now going to be misrepresentative of the usual and overwhelming communications of police, and in these cases, people of color. Or two, some people say, well, finally, we got video evidence that if you saw the police report the next day, would have read completely different. Which one do you think it is?
Look, first and foremost, I'm a civil rights attorney. I've sued New York City Police Department, Yonkers Police Departments, multiple other municipality police departments. And it is true, there are a few bad apples that spoil well. Not every police officer is a bad police officer. Most are good police officers. And I think what we see to the answers to some of this police brutality that has been happening for a very long time. If I grew up in the Bronx in the 80s, New York City and New York City police officers and African Americans didn't have a very good relationship in the 80s and 90s. I mean, there was a lot of police brutality. Now we're actually seeing it on video. And I think part of the answer here is that police officers should be required to wear cameras so we know what happened, that they were acting in a proper manner, that they were acting in conduit with their training. And part of this boils down to is, did they have the proper training? Obviously, chokehold's been banned from New York City Police Department for a number of years, and there's a reason for that, because people can die.
But yet, we talked about this last night, you got the mayor who campaigned, was elected in no small part on stopping broken windows and stop and frisk, etc., saying that sometimes chokeholds are appropriate. You have the police commissioner saying, you know what, chokeholds, they're not completely banned. So there isn't clarity as much as we think as to what is or isn't the policy.
The question you asked was the correct one, and the answer that you got was the good one. What we're getting are citizen cell phone videos. Good thing. It'd be much easier for everybody if we weren't dealing with the videotaping of the outrageous incidents, that apparently outrageous incidents, and if there was a record, which technology would allow to be assembled, of everything that's going on. At that point, we could answer the question you asked: is this an isolated incident, or is it part of a pattern? The police forces and police unions and police officers ought to be embracing the new technology. It will clarify and solve a lot of this.
And in fact, if we recall a lawsuit in New York City that was filed that talked about the disparate impact of Black and Latinos, the stop and frisk lawsuit, in which Judge Slaner found that, federal judge found that New York City did violate the rights of African Americans and Latinos, and ordered that essentially that police officers should wear body cameras. So that's the kind of the first phase.
And it won't be the first major municipality to do that.
No,
more and more cities across the country are doing that. Originally, I thought police would fight it. They seem to be embracing it for the very reasons you laid out. All right. When we come back, we're going to turn our eyes to Washington. Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, he's got some tough words here about his former boss, President Obama. What Panetta has to say, not just about his handling of ISIL, but also the way the president plays politics. Stay with us.